What started as a search for Lori Vallow's two youngest kids in the fall of 2019 would soon become a massive investigation into multiple mysterious deaths. And at the center of it all was defendant Chad Daybell and the bizarre spiritual beliefs that he was preaching. Prosecutors say that Daybell believed he was a prophet, and it was his mission to rid the world of dark spirits in preparation for the apocalypse. And right at Chad's side was his soon-to-be wife, Lori Vallow. Let's go back into court now, where an FBI agent continues to testify to messages between Chad and Lori. Remember, this is direct examination by the state, and we're taking you right back in where we've left off.
Go ahead, Ms. Blake.
Who did you believe the her to be?
Tammy Daybell.
Or I said her, but the word is actually she, the pronoun used, correct?
Correct.
Looking at the second to the last sentence, could you explain if there was anything about that drew your attention?
Yes, it helps tie in the line, "I feel she will be gone by then." So Chad Daybell tells Lori Vallow that the Lord has hinted to him that he might not get to be with Lori Vallow until after this graduation ceremony takes place on July 23rd, and asks Lori Vallow to, quote, "please ask about that."
If we turn to the next slide, again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read that. Agent Hart, looking at the date on this one, how many days ago had Charles been killed?
3 days prior.
And again, Tammy Daybell's still alive?
Yes.
Do you know, or did you learn through the investigation who Lily would be referencing?
Yes, Lily is another name for Lori Vallow.
Was there something about this that caught your attention?
There are two things about this communication that caught my attention.
Could you tell me what those were?
The first is the reference to joining Chad Daybell in the shower. They were physically, Lori Vallow was in Arizona, Chad Daybell was in Idaho at the time of this message. So there are repeated references to Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell having the ability to connect on a spiritual plane and be together spiritually. So this is just one example of that, but it's pertinent because it happens repeatedly and it could be easily confused that they were actually physically present together, which they were not. So that was the first thing that stood out.
And what was the next thing?
The next thing is the last line of Chad Daybell's text to Lori Vallow, where he says he loves her so immensely that the whole universe knows it, and very soon the people on this little blue globe will know it too, which demonstrates that their relationship was clandestine or secret at this point, and that at some future date, the relationship between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow would be divulged by Chad Daybell.
And then moving to the next slide, again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors time to read that. Agent Hart, when we look at these messages, there is the name James and a name Elena referenced. Did you see those in this message?
Yes.
Were you able to determine through the investigation who James is referencing?
Yes, James is Chad Daybell.
And were you able to determine who Elena is referencing?
Yes, Elena is Lori Vallow.
And again, the date on these messages is how many days after Charles Vallow was killed?
This is now 3 days after he was killed.
What is it about these particular messages that drew your attention?
Well, the James and Elena communications are very significant, and we see them first in the email section of the iCloud, starting on July 8th, continuing through July 9th, and through much of July. Chad Daybell is the author of these portions of a narrative or a history that chronicles Chad Daybell's meeting Lori Vallow and how their relationship developed. He refers to himself as James in this and to Lori Vallow as Elena, but in fact, this is autobiographical. It is based in fact. We verified the facts of the story as being correct and accurate to real events. And so in this, we have a description from Chad Daybell as to how he met Lori, and particularly several important events that occurred early on in their relationship.
And in this first one, there's an indication now on with the story. Were there other segments that came before this next message?
Yes, and it's very voluminous. And so what we're seeing here were portions that were sent via text message by Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. But as I said, on July 8th is the first instance we see of a very lengthy narrative written by Chad Daybell, sent to Lori Vallow via email.
And again, during this time, Tammy Daybell is still alive?
She is.
In that second message, there's the indication they would both attend the same event in mid-November. Were you able to determine through the investigation if that occurred?
Yes, so that's a reference to November 15th through the 17th of 2018. So while this message was sent via text on July 14th of 2019, the narrative contained in the message is talking about a time period between the end of October and prior to November 15th through the 17th of 2018.
And the last sentence of that text, was there something that stood out there?
I think the entire text is pertinent, as well as that last sentence. In the middle, Chad Daybell states in this narrative that he and Lori Vallow had been married before, and references some past time with the Savior when he lived in Jerusalem. And Elena, or Lori, had been his beloved spouse and best friend. In the final line, he says that relationship was now meant to continue in this lifetime. So looking at this history, Chad is saying that after he met Lori Vallow, he knew that their relationship was now meant to continue in this lifetime with the assertion that they had been married in a previous lifetime.
And again, you talked about while this message is sent in July of 2019, that it's referencing events from 2018.
That's correct. Chad Daybell met Lori Vallow on October 26th of 2018 at a Preparing a People conference in St. George, Utah. That's chronicled in this history. In between their first meeting, there was a 3-week time period before they would physically meet again in Mesa, Arizona, November 15th through the 17th, 2018, at another Preparing a People conference. So the time period being referenced by Chad Daybell in this communication is that time period from the end of October 2018 until they meet again physically in November of 2018.
And when this is written, Charles and Tammy are still alive.
That is correct.
We go to the next one. And again, I'm going to pause here to let the jurors read it.
As the jury reads it to themselves, I'd like to read this to you. It quotes, "As James and Elena talk on the phone, he tried to delicately describe their connection to each other, and he was delighted that she believed him. She also snarled that they had been married other times on a previous world, and she accepted that information as well. James was overjoyed to have these memories restored to him because he truly loved her with all his heart. He knew they were meant to be married again and complete important missions together before the second coming. He was ecstatic that she was receiving confirmation of these things as well. As they talked on the phone, the spiritual connection was so intense that it also produced physical desire. And if their spirit was visiting her during those conversations. He also became aware that his spirit would visit her at night, and they would wrap around each other in a sensual embrace. Kissing her was so wonderful and real, and he knew that the next
And this message again has the date of July 14th of 2019, correct?
It's just
Yes, it does.
because the notes.
And could you talk a little bit about what it is about this message that caught your attention?
What caught my attention is that this is the first time Chad Daybell introduces to Lori Vallow the concept that they had lived as human beings at another time in the past, that they had been married to each other in the past, and that they were meant to be married again in this present time and complete these important missions together.
Judge, I'm going to object at this point, and I have voir dire native objection.
Well, there's no pending question at this time. So if there was an objection, Mr. Pryor, it just wasn't timely.
And again, Agent Hart, when we're seeing the James and Elena references and this story being drafted, it is referencing back to events that would have happened previously.
Yes, he is referencing events and phone conversations that took place between the end of October 2018 and just prior to November 15th through the 17th of 2018.
And again, when we're looking at this, Charles has been killed just 3 days before this message.
That's correct.
And in 2018, when this story's referencing back to 2018, Charles and Tammy were still alive.
Yes, Charles and Tammy were still alive. Lori Vallow was married to Charles Vallow, and Chad Daybell was married to Tammy Daybell during this time period that he's describing.
Judge, I'm going to object on response, or actually, Judge, I'll withdraw at this point.
All right. Go ahead, Ms. Blake.
There's also a reference in there, the line starting with "he was ecstatic." Could you read that sentence in there?
He was ecstatic that she was receiving confirmation of these things as well.
Did that indicate anything to you?
Yes, in the first sentence, Chad writes that he tried to delicately describe their connection with one another and was in fact delighted when Lori Vallow believed him. And so this is Chad Daybell introducing these concepts of he and Lori having been married in a previous life.
And then later on, we see that she appeared to be getting confirmation of what Chad was telling her.
Correct.
Well, you know, if Chad Daybell decides not to testify, certainly we get to hear in his words via these text messages between himself and Lori Vallow. Remember, they are still married. Let's take a break. When we come back, of course, we'll get you back inside court. We're going to hit the pause button so we can hear more of what he says when he was texting Lori. Stay tuned.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a self-proclaimed doomsday prophet on trial for triple murder. We're breaking down today's gripping testimony in the trial of Chad Daybell.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
We are in Idaho this afternoon for the Doomsday Prophet murder trial. Defendant Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow began seeing each other while they were both still married, and they quickly began to plan for a life free of their spouses and free of any of their minor children. Prosecutors say in the fall of 2019, Chad and Lori killed Lori's two youngest kids, Tylee and JJ, and then went on to kill Chad's then wife, Tammy, with whom he had 5 children, all before jetting off to Hawaii to get married just weeks later. We want to get you back into court now for more. The FBI agent still testifying on direct, and he's reading texts between the defendant Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow after they met. I personally am not buying what Chad has to sell. Let us know what you think as we go back into court.
There's also reference in there to physical desires.
Yes.
With the talk of physical desires, making love, was there anything about those that caught your attention?
Well, it demonstrated the attraction of Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow instantly upon their meeting in October of 2018.
If we move to the next slide, and again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read this. When we look at these messages, they are also dated July 14th of 2019. Is that correct?
Yes.
What was it about these messages that caught your attention?
This is a communication by Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow seeking an opportunity to be with her in person and using a camp out and a potential speaking assignment as a ruse to be able to leave Rexburg and go and be with Lori Vallow.
And there's a reference there in the first message, whether she is still here or not. Based on your investigation, did you determine who that she would have been referencing?
Tammy Daybell.
And in the James and Elena, we saw some reference to some kind of physical attraction. And then in these, what stood out is Chad and Lori are actually going to meet up in person here.
Yes, the investigation had revealed they had already met at several different times with travel to different places to be together for periods of 2 or 3 days. And in fact, we were able to verify that Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow did meet and were together during that July 24th through 26th timeframe that's referenced in the communication.
And July 24th to 26th, Tammy Daybell was still alive. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then if we go to the next slide, and again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read this. And again, these are a continuation of text messages from July 14th of 2019.
Correct.
And again, just 3 days after Charles Vallow's been killed.
Yes.
What about these messages drew your attention?
There was a lot of what we call sexting content in the iCloud that I examined. I included these communications as just a very, very small example that this was in fact a sexual affair. It was not an emotional affair or a spiritual affair. It's very clear that it's a physical sexual affair between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow.
And moving to the next slide, again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read this. And if we look at these, can you indicate the date on these messages for the record?
July 15th of 2019.
So these are moving to the next day from the previous messages.
Correct.
What is it about these particular messages that caught your attention?
This is an example of how Lori Vallow sought to manipulate Chad Daybell in the immediate aftermath of Charles Vallow's death.
Oh, to have to hear these texts. Let me bring in now criminal defense and personal injury attorney Samantha Vacciana and criminal defense civil rights attorney Cassia Early, both joining us. Thank you so much. Let me start with you, Samantha. Welcome to Court TV. Thank you for joining us. You know, hearing these texts, it's just like, oh gosh, I don't even believe what he's selling. But what are your thoughts as the jury is hearing this and watching this relationship unfold?
I'm not thinking the jury's going to be happy with that. They're listening to these text messages while the individuals that were murdered are still alive, and they're writing these text messages to each other. I don't think it's going to bode well for the defense.
All right, Cassia, so we know at this time both of these individuals are married. So yes, there's a marital affair going on between the two. But how are they going to take from that place, the prosecution, to the place of, and they conspired and murdered 2 minor children and his wife, Tammy.
Escalation, Judge Ashley, because usually it's sex, drugs, and alcohol, but in this case, it's sex, drugs, and religion. And I think what the prosecution is doing, although it's tedious, they're going line by line with these text messages, because you'll see as the relationship develops, it tends to blossom and escalate. And that's when those strong urges, the desires, are for them to be together. So they have their ultimate plan is to get rid of their spouses, to get rid of the children, so they can live happily ever after in this new life that was previously lived, I guess, in the Old Testament time. So they're showing bit by bit how this is going to escalate.
Good points. And we can see as they're texting back and forth the motive, certainly, to get rid of everyone else. Ladies, stay with me. We are going to take a break. When we come back, of course, back into court. More of these text messages. What else are they going to tell each other that now the whole world gets to hear? Stay tuned. We'll bring that to you. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ashley Wilcott. Thank you so much for joining us. More testimony out of Idaho in just a moment. But first, Robin Howington, the Tennessee woman convicted in the death of her own daughter. Well, she was sentenced today.
Ms. Howington, in docket number 117659, based upon the jury's verdict of guilt, finding you guilty in count one of the lesser included offense of reckless homicide, you were found guilty of that offense and sentenced to a term of 3 years to serve within the Tennessee Department of Correction as a range 1 offender. In count 2, based upon the jury's verdict of guilt, finding you guilty of aggravated child neglect, you were found guilty of that offense and sentenced to a term of 22 years to serve within the Tennessee Department of Correction as a range 1 offender. In count 4, based upon the jury's verdict of guilt, finding you guilty of false report, a Class D felony, you were found guilty of that offense and sentenced to a term of 3 years to serve within the Tennessee Department of Correction as a range 1 offender. In count 5, based upon the jury's verdict of guilt, finding you guilty of tampering with evidence, a Class C felony, you were found guilty of that offense and sentenced to a term of 5 years to serve within the Tennessee Department of Correction as a range 1 offender. And finally, in count 6, based upon the jury's verdict of guilt, finding you guilty of attempted tampering with evidence, a Class D felony, you were sentenced to a term of 3 years to serve within the Tennessee Department of Correction as a range 1 offender. These sentences will be served concurrently, one with the other, for a total aggregate sentence of 22 years to serve within the Tennessee Department of Correction. And as your attorney has pointed out, the service rate is at 85%.
And back in March, a jury found Howington guilty of reckless homicide and aggravated child neglect after hearing the bizarre story she told police about what happened to her only five-year-old child, Destiny Oliver, including what did she do? Well, she blamed an unknown intruder, then she blamed her daughter's father, and finally saying her 2-year-old son was responsible for the 5-year-old's murder. Howington will now spend 22 years behind bars. Good, that's where she should be, and we will have more from her sentencing later today. Now let's get back to Idaho, where testimony remains underway in the Doomsday Prophet murder trial. We are picking it back up where we left off with texts between the defendant Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, hearing more than we want to about what they want to do with each other. Let's get back into court.
Could you read the last line?
He says, "You are my wonderful best friend that I can't live without."
And again, during this time, Tammy Daybell is still alive.
Correct.
And the manipulation that you're indicating is Lori's response there. Could you read the first line?
Yes, she replies, "And yet you are so sad, missing you."
Referencing back to his message to her that he couldn't live without her.
Correct. Chad Daybell tells Lori Vallow how much he loves her and he can't live without her. And her response to that is, "And yet you are, in fact, living without me. So sad."
And moving to the next slide, again, I will pause to allow the jurors to read. And could you indicate the date on these messages for the record?
July 18th of 2019.
What about these messages stood out to you?
Well, this is a series of texts that occupies this slide and the next 3 slides, all regarding the same subject, and that is Lori Vallow has just found out that she is not the beneficiary to Charles Vallow's $1 million life insurance policy.
And she's telling Chad that.
Correct.
Going to the next slide, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
All right, here's what the jury's reading. It's on your screen. Chad said to Lori, "It seems you have had to have agreed to the change. Maybe your name was forged. You should have a good paper trail to prove it." And then she responds he says again, "I love you. This is terrible. It's probably another step in bringing down especially Brandon." And then Lori says to him, "Nope, he can change it anytime he wants. He's the agent and anyone can change their beneficiary anytime with their own signature."
And you indicated this is a continuation of the previous slide, correct?
Correct, as well as the next 2 slides.
In looking at this particular slide, there's a reference to bringing down the Gadiantons, especially Brandon.
Yes.
Through the investigation, did you determine who that Brandon would be that is being referenced?
That is Brandon Boudreau, Melanie Boudreau's soon-to-be ex-husband.
Through your investigation, did you learn anything in relation to Brandon and an investigation involving him?
Yes.
What did you learn?
What could you clarify? What did we learn about?
Yes, sorry. Did you learn anything about an incident being investigated by the Gilbert Police Department involving Brandon as a victim?
Yes.
And what did you learn regarding that?
On November 2nd of 2019, as Brandon Boudreau was pulling in his driveway of his home in Arizona, an individual shot at him with a rifle, narrowly missing him.
And you said November 2nd. Is it possible it was October 2nd?
I'm sorry, you are correct. It is October 2nd. Excuse me.
And that was October 2nd of 2019.
Correct.
Do you know, did the reference bringing down the Gadiantons mean anything, or did you learn what that was referencing?
I learned that that is a reference. The name Gadianton has to do with a group of people that's referenced in a book of scripture called the Book of Mormon. The Gadiantons were robbers and thieves. And so the word Gadianton is indicative of someone who is a thief or a robber or a bad individual.
And as Lori's telling Chad that she's no longer the beneficiary, can you read the last text into the record?
Yes, that's a text from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. It says, it will be interesting if it got changed after he had 2 bullets in his chest.
And going to the next slide, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
Well, here's what Lori says. "I don't think it could have. You can't change it after the death date. They would review that." Then Chad says, "Yes, I'm thinking Kay as well. She's probably freaking out that you got those computers. I'm going to shower and give you a blessing. A blessing. I'm eager to get home so we can talk. It really will be okay, my love. You are wonderful." And then Lori tells Chad, "So I talked to the insurance company. He changed it in March, so it was probably Ned before we got rid of him." was probably Ned before we got rid of him. They can't tell me to who, of course, but it's done. I will still get the $4,000 a month from SS. We know SS stands for Social Security. Listen, in their own words being used against them, probably appropriately so. Let's take a break. When we come back, of course, we'll get you back in for more trial in Idaho versus Chad Daybell. Stay tuned.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan
In every story, in every trial, every case, there's at least two sides to it.
to dive into the latest
Oh my God.
and breaking true crime stories.
This was a very targeted, very personal attack.
Inside
My whole life depends on it.
and outside of the courtroom.
She's a psychopath.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Saturday morning, 10/9 Central. Only on Court TV.
Welcome back. Let's get you back into Idaho for the trial against Chad Daybell right now. FBI agent under direct examination by the state. He is reading different text messages that occurred between the defendant, Chad Daybell, and his current wife, Lori Vallow. Let's go back in.
There's some additional references on this particular slide that stood out to you, or particular statements?
Yes, primarily the last line.
And what was it about that that stood out to you?
That's a text from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell. And so she had found out that the beneficiary for the life insurance policy had been changed in March of 2019. And then she says, so it was probably Ned before we got rid of him. Ned is the name of the supposed dark entity that Chad Daybell had assigned to Charles Vallow.
And then there's a reference there before we got rid of him, correct?
Correct.
Did you learn what the $4,000 a month from SS was in reference to through the investigation?
Yes, that's a reference to money that would still be coming to Lori Vallow through Social Security for her children, primarily for JJ.
And then if we move to the next slide, again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
Very well.
All right, Lori says to Chad, found it. Ned gave all of it to Rhonda. Chad says, of course, to her, glad you found that out. Lori says it fits. Now she will try to take him. This is working on her, work on me too. Reading all this stuff makes me sick. And actually it said, thanks for working on her, work on me too. Reading this stuff makes me sick. And then Chad says back, we will work hard on Rhonda when we are together. I will get her numbers as low as I can by Wednesday. Referencing, I think, the numbers is that piece of darkness, lightness.
Slide, can you read the date on these messages into the record?
Yes, these 5 messages are all from July 21st of 2019.
We've talked about who Ned is. Through the investigation, did you learn who Rhonda is that's being referenced?
Yes, Rhonda is the name assigned to the dark spirit or dark entity that Chad Daybell assigned to Kay Woodcock.
Judge, I'm going to object on foundation.
Sustained.
Agent Hart, as part of your investigation, did you review other documents?
Many, yes.
Did you review other reports?
Yes.
Did you discuss this matter with other investigators?
Yes.
And based on your review in this case, did you determine who Rhonda was referencing?
Yes.
And who?
And I'm going to renew my objection, Judge. You can talk about all the reports you want, but unless they get into specifics, telling me how he came to that conclusion, which documents, when, where, and time, it's still not sufficient foundation.
For purposes of this direct, I do find there's sufficient foundation. I'll overrule the objection. You can cross on that, of course, Mr. Pryor, when it's your chance for cross-examination.
Who did you determine Rhonda to be referencing?
Kay Woodcock, who is Charles Vallow's sister.
Now, there's references in some of these messages as well to working on someone. Through your review of the iCloud and messages, did you determine anything in relation to those working on, or did that stand out to you?
Yes, this is a phrase that we see repeatedly in the iCloud, and it actually has a dual meaning. When they're referencing somebody who Chad Daybell has determined to have a dark spirit or a dark entity working on them, has a negative connotation. When it's someone who's determined to be light or good, then working on them is an uplifting or a building connotation.
Agent Hart, as we've reviewed some of these messages that were around or shortly after Charles' death.
All right, let's bring back in criminal defense attorneys Samantha Vacciana and Kesia Early. Kesia, again, listening to Chad's own words in these text messages, what are your last thoughts as you're watching this?
He incriminated not only himself, but Lori. So it goes back, he said Ned, so we know Ned stands for Charles Vallow. So that's the admission right there. And I'm pretty sure that the prosecution is going to use that in their closing arguments. And he better not take the stand because he has a lot of explaining to do.
He has a lot of explaining to do. Will he take this stand? All right, Samantha, tell us what you think of these texts, but also, do you think he may be of the kind of personality that he decides against advice? I'm going to take the stand and tell the jury what they need to know.
Well, I completely agree with Attorney Early in that he should not take the stand. Those text messages are not good for him. They show that he is conspiring with Lori, that he's engaging and encouraging all of the acts that he's accused of. So certainly he shouldn't take the stand. In regards to your question, whether he'll take the stand, it's been my experience that oftentimes our clients don't listen to us. And based on the personality that I've seen exhibited, more than likely he's going to take the stand and not follow the advice of counsel.
That's what I think as well. Just quickly, Casey, do you think he might take the stand as well?
I believe he will. I believe he thinks he can talk his way out of being charged, not only charged, but convicted in this case. So I really do believe he's not going to take the advice of counsel.
I know, and I don't, his texts to me don't ring true. I think he's manipulative. I just don't buy, again, what he is selling. Just my personal opinion. Thank you so much, Samantha Vacciana, for joining us today. Great to have you on Court TV. Kesia Early sticking around with us because Michael Ayala will be joining me, and we will be bringing you more testimony in the Doomsday Prophet murder trial. You don't want to miss it. Keep reading those texts. We'll be right back. Court TV, your front row seat to justice. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ashley Wilcott.
And I'm Michael Ayala. We're both here today giving you your front row seat to justice. What started as a search for Lori Vallow's two youngest kids in the fall of 2019 would soon become a massive investigation into multiple mysterious deaths.
And at the center of it all was defendant Chad Daybell and the spiritual beliefs he was preaching.
Prosecutors say Daybell believed he was a prophet, and it was his mission to rid the world of dark spirits in preparation for the apocalypse.
And right at Chad's side was his soon-to-be wife, Lori Vallow, now convicted killer.
Yep, a convicted killer and going on trial yet again in Arizona. All right, folks, let's go back to court now, where an FBI agent is testifying to messages between Chad and Lori, and these are very revealing. Let's get back into court.
Review of the messages. Did you ever see any signs of grief or sorrow from Lori Vallow?
No.
Did you ever see any signs of grief or sorrow from Chad Daybell?
None.
If we go to the next slide again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read. And would you read the date of this message into the record?
July 21st of 2019.
And we've talked about James and Elena before, and this story, again, it references a prior period of time than when the message was being sent. Is that correct?
Yes. So at this point in this narrative, the dates are, this would be November 15th of 2018.
And we saw a previous slide dealing with that same time frame. Is that correct?
The previous slides were actually talking about that period of time between the end of October and prior to November 15th of 2018. This particular story talks about when Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow are now physically together in Mesa, Arizona on November 15th of 2018.
And through the investigation, did you learn if Chad Daybell was in fact in Arizona in November of 2018?
Yes, we verified that he was present on that specific date. We verified that he spoke at a Preparing a People conference there during those dates of the 15th through the 17th of November 2018, and verified that he was physically present at other locations as well.
And outside of the continuation of the James and Elena, were there specific things in this message that drew your attention?
Yes.
What were those?
Primarily that there was a plan that had been revealed or communicated to Chad that wasn't entirely clear to him yet, but it included them, meaning Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow, being together at the present time.
So specifically, the plan was being revealed to Chad.
Correct.
And there's a reference of Chad and Lori having a mission together.
Yes.
And moving to the next slide, I'm again going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
All right, I'd like to read this for you folks as Chad Daybell. It's written from Chad to Lori. He says here, they embraced following the blessings, and the emotions they felt were a mixture of eternal bliss and celestial desire. The sexual chemistry was undeniable, but the spiritual unity was a glorious bonus for them both. They had only known each other for 3 weeks, but two lonely, misunderstood souls had finally found their best friend that they could trust and confide in.
Yes.
In looking at these particular messages, was there anything that stood out to you?
Yes, they're very insightful in that Chad, in his own words, is explaining the feelings he had for Lori Vallow within 3 weeks of meeting her, that they had progressed through this relationship. They had finally found their best friend that they could trust and confide in.
And again, the period of time this message is referencing, both Lori and Chad were married to other people.
Correct.
And Lori Vallow responded to this message. Can you read her response?
She loves it.
And there's the reference in there to the 3 weeks. And would this have been, was the meeting in November about 3 weeks after Chad and Lori met in real life?
Yes, that's verified.
Moving to the next message, again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
All right, I'll read along with the jury here. They arrived at the temple, and they both felt they should do sealings together. They were soon seated in a sealing room facing each other. Elena, who is Lori, looked so stunning as she smiled at him. She seemed calm, while he felt quite nervous. Their opportunity soon came to kneel across the altar from each other. And as the sealer pronounced those sacred words, James and Elena knew that they were now sealed as husband and wife for eternity. As the earthly sealing was taking place, a similar scene involving their spirits was happening on a higher plane. Where they kissed and unified their souls, they knew they had just begun a new journey together that was eternal and never-ending.
And this is a continuation of the James and Elena story being written.
Yes.
Are you aware of which time period this message is referencing?
This is referencing a specific date of November 16th, 2019, or excuse me, 2018.
And was there something about this particular part of the story that drew your attention?
There were multiple things that drew my attention to this that I believe are pertinent to the investigation.
Can we go through those one by one?
Sure.
What is the first one that drew your attention?
So the first is that Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow went to an LDS temple that has been verified. They attended the temple in Gilbert, Arizona on November 16th of 2018 together. And that they then participated in a ceremony that is a proxy ceremony for marrying people who have already been deceased.
And again, that was verified that they were at that temple together.
Yes.
And they reference the proceeding. After that, there's an indication in here, if you can read from the James and Elena knew.
James and Elena knew that they were now sealed as husband and wife for eternity.
Did that line stick out to you?
Yes. This is Chad Daybell's writing stating that when he and Lori participated in this proxy ceremony, that somehow through that, they had become once again married for eternity.
And then if we go to the last sentence starting with they knew, would you read that into the record?
Yes. They knew they had just begun a new journey together that was eternal and never ending.
Was there something about that particular line that caught your attention?
Yes. This is the beginning of their relationship and continuation of that relationship in the coming months that encapsulate the time period of this investigation and the crimes that are alleged.
And if we go to the next slide, again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
These are two texts from Lori to Chad now. First, it's making me so happy to read about our life that I am finally going to dance. missing you and loving you from afar. Then another text from Lori. It was great. I feel free again. I love you more than ever and can't wait to be with you forever. I'm begging Father and Mother. That's my job tonight.
And this one is from Chad Daybell to Lori. It says, I will be right beside you, begging just as much. I need you desperately. All right. While the jury's reading that, we're going to step aside here, take a break, get you right back inside the courtroom on the other side. Keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a self-proclaimed doomsday prophet on trial for triple murder. We're breaking down today's gripping testimony in the trial of Chad Daybell. Plus, Karen Reed stands accused of hitting her police officer boyfriend with her SUV and leaving him in the snow to die. This is everything you need to know ahead of next week's opening statements.
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
All right, folks, back now to Idaho for the Doomsday Prophet murder trial.
The defendant, Chad Daybell, faces the death penalty if he is found guilty of triple homicide in the deaths of his first wife and his new wife's 2 children.
All right, we're going to get you back into court now for more. Again, an FBI agent is on the stand reading communications and letters and texts between Chad and Lori.
That's right.
And in looking at these messages, were there things that caught your attention?
Yes, 2 things primarily.
And can you walk us through those?
Yes. The first is that Lori Vallow responds to those prior clips that Chad wrote about James and Elena, saying, it's making me so happy to read about our life, which is a verification that this is an autobiographical or factual account.
And then what is the next thing?
The next is the line from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell, which says, I love you more than ever. I can't wait to be with you forever. I'm begging Father and Mother. That's my job tonight. To which Chad Daybell responds, I will be right beside you, begging just as much. I need you desperately.
And what, if anything, did that indicate to you about Chad and Lori's relationship?
That they had a clear plan to be with each other, to be together forever, and that they were both begging God for that to happen.
And again, when these messages are being exchanged, is Tammy Daybell still alive?
She is.
In your review of these iCloud accounts, was there ever any indication of Chad planning on getting a divorce?
None.
Ever any indication of Chad planning on getting separated?
No.
Moving to the next slide, and again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
All right, this is a text from Chad to Lori. He says, love you, going with Garth in an hour to see Other Side of Heaven, missing you desperately, but so excited to be with you.
Lori responds, I love you. You will enjoy the scenery. Looks like Kauai a lot.
And then actually Lori again.
Oh, hopefully we will be there someday soon together.
That's the plan.
Then he says,
and my greatest desire. And he continues on. Hi, darling. Back from the movie. We enjoyed it. I look forward to being on a tropical island with you.
22nd of 2019.
You just talked about the previous slide indicating a plan to be together.
Correct.
What is it about these particular messages that stood out to you?
Again, there are a couple of different things that stood out as relevant. The first is the text from Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow referencing going to see a movie with Garth, who is his son. He then says, missing you desperately, but so excited to be with you. If you'll recall from a prior slide, there's a plan July 24th through the 26th for Chad and Lori to be meeting in person. And so the first line is a reference to their in-person meeting that's coming up.
And then looking at Lori's response, is there something in there that drew your attention?
Very much. She said, I love you. You will enjoy the scenery. Looks like Kauai a lot. And then responds with another text saying, hopefully we will be there someday soon together.
So there's a reference to Kauai.
Yes.
Do you know where Kauai is located?
Yes, it's in Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands.
What's Chad's response to that?
Chad's response is significant. He says, that is the plan, exclamation point, and my greatest desire.
And then we talked about Kauai being in Hawaii. Looking at Chad's final sentence there of the last message, could you read that into the record?
Yes. I look forward to being on a tropical island with you.
I asked you earlier if you knew when Chad and Lori got married. Do you recall when that was?
November 5th of 2019.
Do you know where they got married?
I do.
Where was that?
Kauai.
Do you know where Chad and Lori relocated eventually after getting married?
Kauai.
During the time those messages are being exchanged, was J.J. Vallow still alive?
He was.
Was Tylee Ryan still alive?
She was.
Was Tammy Daybell still alive?
Yes, she was.
Moving to the next slide. Again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
All right, Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow. I'm home, missing you immensely and feeling very tired, but I had a splendid time with you, my love. We'll text again soon, then chat again. Tonight, I figured out who I feel like. I'm a grown-up version of Harry Potter who has to live with the Dudleys in his little space under the stairs. Every few weeks, I get to escape and have amazing adventures with my goddess lover, but then I have to return to my place under the stairs, feeling trapped. But I sense permanent freedom is coming. Fire emoji, fire emoji.
And Agent Hart, can you read the date these messages were sent into the record?
July 26th of 2019.
Looking at these messages, did certain parts of them catch your attention?
Very much so, yes.
And what is it about them that caught your attention, if you can walk us through that?
Well, the time frame is important. So these messages were sent as Chad Daybell was returning home from having spent 2 or 3 days from the 24th through the 26th with Lori Vallow. So he references that he's just gotten home, back to his home in Rexburg, and that he had a splendid time with her. And then he follows up with a narrative or sentiment that he believes or feels that he's a grown-up.
Michael, I am so glad that you did say the fire emoji, because there are emojis all through these texts.
Yes,
How old are they, first of all? And second of all, I just feel like he is manipulative, and I feel dirty.
I don't know where to place him. I got a grown man here. Obviously, he's a decent writer and has some interesting ideas, but he's comparing himself to Harry Potter.
Yeah,
With Harry
under
Potter,
the
I was like,
stairs.
I mean, I don't. I'm not connecting it all. So
I'm not either.
He
Again,
creates this real dichotomy of, I'm not sure what to make of him. At
Yeah,
this point.
how old are these two?
Yeah, exactly.
Anywho.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll have more of these and those wonderful dramatic readings on the other side. Keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice. Now back to Idaho, where jurors are hearing more testimony in the trial against Chad Daybell. He and his now convicted wife, Lori Vallow, are accused of using their bizarre religious beliefs to justify and commit the murders of Lori's children, Tylee and JJ, as well as Chad's first wife, Tammy.
On the stand right now, an FBI agent testifying as to text messages between Chad and Lori, and sometimes they're long, so they say, okay, jury, we're just going to be quiet while you review them. Michael and I are trying to read those to you as that happens so that you can hear all of these text messages. He's under direct examination. Let's go back in for more from the FBI agent.
Live with the Dudleys in a little space under the stairs. And then every few weeks he gets to escape and have amazing adventures with his goddess lover. The part that to me is most significant is the final sentiment where he says, then I have to return to my place under the stairs, feeling trapped. But I sense permanent freedom is coming, exclamation point.
And you indicated he just returned from the weekend or from the time with Lori, correct?
Yes, these messages were sent upon his return back to his home in Rexburg.
So he's referencing being back home with his family. He feels trapped.
Correct.
Looking at the next slide, and again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
All right, from Lori Vallow to Chad, are you mad? Sad? What?
And then Chad responds, I'm doing okay. Just no privacy here to hardly text, and I'm missing you immensely. I feel good about the trip.
And then Lori responds after receiving that, I need a distraction while I'm waiting for you. I love you, kissy face emoji.
Is that what that is? And then Chad Daybell responds, absolutely.
And
I
Agent
think
Hart,
you'll
if
have
you can
a
read
fun
the date
time.
these messages were sent into the record.
July 28th of 2019.
What about these messages stood out to you?
There's a couple of things. This is in reference, just for context, to a trip that Lori Vallow was planning to take with Melanie Boudreau and Alex Cox to Southern California.
And in these, we see a message from Chad to Lori about no privacy here to hardly text. Do you happen to know where Chad would have been located at that time?
Judge, objection, foundation.
Sustain.
With these messages, was there any through your investigation, was there any indication that Chad Daybell was going on a trip?
No.
The indication was Lori Vallow was going on a trip.
Correct.
So based on your investigation, Chad wasn't leaving his home.
Correct.
Judge, objection. This is leading.
Well, it was, but it's already been asked and answered.
Then we see, looking at that third message on there, the text from Lori to Chad, is there something about that that drew your attention?
Yes, this is approximately 2 weeks after Lori Vallow's husband, Charles Vallow, has been killed. She is now free from her marriage. Chad Daybell is not free from his marriage. And she says, I need a distraction while I'm waiting for you. And he replies, absolutely, I think you'll have a fun time.
And turning to the next slide, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to look at these. And
Counsel, could I have a quick sidebar?
All right, that's a sidebar, but we learn after the sidebar, they adjourn for the day. Michael, we're going to bring in our guest. Just your final thoughts real quick watching this. And again, I feel dirty. I feel like Chad Daybell is now someone that I think is manipulative and intimately involved in everything that's happened.
Yeah, we didn't see a lot of this evidence here, particular evidence in the first trial with Lori.
Right.
As we're starting to see this, I'm beginning to change my mind about who Chad Daybell is. I thought maybe he was, you know, someone who had been manipulated by Lori. I think he's pretty manipulated himself.
I think so too. Let's bring in, still with us, criminal defense civil rights attorney Kesia Early. Kesia, weigh in. Tell us your thoughts about this defendant and where he stands at this point.
Yeah, I'm like Michael. I really thought that he was brainwashed in the beginning by Lori and that Lori had all of this power. But, you know, they are both culpable, and the prosecution should use their words against them in the closing arguments. That line in the text message where he said permanent freedom is coming, well, permanent freedom was there, and it was at their hands, and they took control, and they are fully responsible. In this case, Chad Daybell was fully responsible in eliminating anyone that had anything to do with connecting with his goddess. I mean, he missed his call, and he could have been a great romantic fantasy writer, but instead he chose to take the lives of innocent people.
That's what it reminds me of, that kind of romance fiction writing that's over the top.
The novels with the guy on the cover on a horse with long flowing hair.
Yes.
That's what he should be writing. He probably would have made a lot of money doing that and could have changed that boring life of his instead of going about it this way. But, you know, we still remain sort of, you know, we're flummoxed by the idea of whether this is something that they truly believed. And again, I don't think in the overall scheme of things this really matters. It only matters in this sense. Do you think that it would make sense for him to take the stand and explain that what this was all about? Was this some sort of real true belief he had? Does that help make any difference? Is there anything he could say on the stand that could help him at this point?
Not at all, because even though that's his truth, that's his belief, it still doesn't have an explanation for his behavior and his actions afterwards. I think it'll just make it worse. I mean, he's going to have lots of explaining to do. And I believe he's so arrogant that he will feel that he's right in his position and the jury will just hate him more. I mean, just reading the text messages and knowing that you're having this conversation while your wife is alive and you're dreading going back home to your 5 children and your family. I mean, he's already a turnoff. So I don't believe anything that he can say will help him in this predicament. So not at all. Don't speak.
Yeah, it's interesting. He compares being a father, going home to his wife and children, as being Harry Potter, living under the stairs.
Yeah. Again, one word, if you really are that unhappy, what is it? Divorce instead of murder.